Hey, pick 'em pop, big gun Brian Petrie, giving out the lot. One is mortal, you know it won't miss. Gonna take a shot, dog lock, that's the underdog. Yeah, they in the hunt, send them home, that's KO or submission. Yeah, somebody done, slime ball, yeah, that's the parlay. We gon' make it known, pick 'em pop from MMA takes. Yeah, let's get it going.
Yes, sir. Do not adjust your TV screens or phone screens, iPad screens. That is Kenny Florian. He's on the show. Welcome, Ken Flo. How you doing, my guy?
BP, what is up, bro?
Man, I've never wanted to call in this favor. I've never asked you or John to be on the show. There's plenty of times I wanted you guys to be on, but I'm like, yeah, they've done so much for me. I'm not going to do it. I want to start with this before we get to questions.
Yes.
I don't know if I ever told you this. It's been a while since we've known each other, but my very first time gambling, not legally, mind you, because I wasn't young enough, was I won money on you.
No way.
I was 20 years old, and a buddy of mine, this is started like after this bet, we all did a buck aside for fights or whatever. Yeah. But I was so confident because I was a huge Ultimate Fighter 1 fan, and you were fighting Kit Cope. Wow. Kit Cope was coming off the MTV shit, right? The Muay Thai fighter. And this guy who doesn't really know MMA really well goes, oh, Kit's going to run through Kenny. I go, dude, no chance. And I go, I'll bet you anything you want. He goes, $5. Now, my net worth was $5 at this time. So I was like, done.
Yes.
$5, let's do it. And we got you. I mean, you submitted them twice, basically. So
that's hilarious. I was just talking about that fight to my students the other day because they're asking me how to counter a Kimura, and that's what Kit Cope was trying to do. He was like trying to Kimura in my hand, and I used it off a back take.
Yeah,
dude, that's so funny.
Yeah, that was my very first foray into it, and then years later, obviously, it became legal. Or I went to Vegas and done it the real way and all this stuff. But you were my first cash,
dude.
And
let's go.
Yeah, it's an honor that you're here, and I mean I get to share a screen with you pretty much every week, which is pretty nuts. So anyway, you are officially a part of Punch Convo, which we both are. You introduced me to Russ, and we got the ball rolling. You were in the forums. You were chatting it up. In the lovely, beautiful community over at Punch Convo, they are going. They submitted questions. Before we get the questions, though, Punch Convo, I'm going to put it on the screen after the edit and all that. They're giving a free year premium membership for a free still. We're still doing the promo. Promo's on the screen. OG free year up until UFC Nashville, which I believe is July 12th. Yes. So go in. It's going to go past 200 subscribers. You're getting in for a free year. It's already kicking off. We're almost a week out from being launched. Been about 5 days since launch, and it's been a lot of fun. Kenny's on. I'm in. Sanko's in there as well. Yes. Plenty more to come. And guys, we're on beta 1, version 1. This thing's going to take over. We're going to be amazing, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So without further ado, Kenny, let's get to some of these questions. I have not screened these. I just liked every single one and then screenshot them and kind of put them in this thing here. So hopefully they're appropriate. Hopefully it's not talking about, I think most of them are. The community is pretty great. So let's go to the first question here. We got from John's Boy on 3PC. For Ken Flo, I have a huge appreciation for mental fortitude of MMA fighters. Please give us a glimpse into how mindset changes throughout fight night, from the locker room to walkouts to Bruce's intro. When do the nerves subside and you zone in?
Gosh, phenomenal question.
It's a good question.
I think it probably changes, or I'll say this. It changed for me throughout my career. When I got called for the Ultimate Fighter finale, if I had the option of running home, I would have run home at that point. I was so nervous. Before then, the biggest crowd I fought in front of was like, I don't know, a couple hundred people. Yeah. And, hearing, Burt Watson at the time being like, all right, baby, you're next. You're up in line. Let's go, baby. Yeah. And I was like, oh, my gosh, And it was pretty much like that until kind of all the way till the middle of my career. When I heard Burt Watson's voice and he's like, Kenny Florian, he's like, you're up on deck, baby, 5 minutes. And just my whole body would just be like, I wanted to run out of my own skin. I was like, wow, this is crazy. What the heck am I doing here? But as I got closer and closer to the octagon, I felt more and more comfortable. I'm like, okay, like the waiting part, the waiting is the hardest part. That is true. I think, and then, during fight week, it's like you're constantly kind of fighting yourself to a certain extent. you'll hear that negative voice sometimes, which kind of was prominent at times throughout my voice. I think is what helped me analyze the stuff that I need to fix, but also which I don't know would kind of get those doubts to creep in at times. So you're kind of trying to quiet that voice a little bit, like no, shut up, negative Ken Flo, like I got this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and you just kind of remind yourself of all the hard work you put into it, yada yada yada. Keep good people around you, all that stuff. And then as you're walking out to the cage, I would feel more and more comfortable. And as they're announcing your name, you're just like, let's get this going, man. Let's go. I just want to get in there and fight. So those nerves really went away, as I got more experience. But early on, it was definitely a very loud voice that would kind of keep you nervous. And a lot of it, I think, was just because I was so new to it. I was, 4 fights, and I was essentially on the Ultimate Fighter.
Right.
So I was just thrown into the fire. Like everything I do, for whatever reason, I get pushed into that fire, and it's like, here you go, Kenny, figure it out.
Right.
Anyways, yeah. So hopefully I answered that question, but did I answer that question?
You did, absolutely, 100%.
All right.
A lot of fighters I've heard. I'm not a fighter myself, but a lot of fighters. Darren Till, who was very he had bravado. He's confident.
Yeah.
He said up until the walkout, he's trying to figure out a way to get hurt, to get out. He's like, I need out. And I know a lot of fighters deal with that internally, and then once you hit that cage, you're like, oh, fuck, I'm here. Let's go. I mean, some fighters are complete rare breeds, and we just saw Topuria smiling. I mean, I don't even know if that guy has nerves or not. I mean, Chuck got his name Iceman because he never got nervous, at least early in his career.
Right.
Like, he come out dancing and smiling. So let's go to question 2. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, dude, it's like these guys that are coming to the game now that, like, he probably did tons of jiu-jitsu and wrestling tournaments before he was even a teenager, and then it's like having those sparring matches and having, his first amateur fights, like still probably as a teenager. And by the time he's, 19, 20 years old, it's like he had as much experience as I did midway through my UFC career.
Crazy.
And now we see this guy, he's like clapping for Charles Oliveira. He's bowing to Charles. Like, sorry, I have to kill you, bro. And it's just so a matter of fact with that guy. So anyways,
he's
it's impressive.
Special, bro. Like, I don't use the word aura, but that guy, he's got something to him. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But you're thinking about, like, back in the old school days where you came up, it was a lot of thrown into the fire. And it just made me think of another Boston legend. I believe he has passed away, but Sean Gannon. The guy who beat Kimbo in the UFC. He's like, all right, let's cash in on this. The guy was not ready. He was a cop that was tough as shit, but not ready. And I'm just thinking, man, the balls on that fucking guy to take the UFC fight and go, fuck it, let's go. He ended up getting mollywopped, but man, like, what a stud to do that. Like, just not cave under the pressure. They always ask me all the time, like, back up when I used to train all the time and I would be shadow boxing after I'm done unloading the trailer. And people are like, would you fight Brock Lesnar? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, what if I lose to Brock Lesnar? Who cares?
Right, exactly.
I'd fight him. I'm not saying I'm going to win. I'll lose. Who cares? Of course I'm going to fight him. Yeah. And then I'm just sitting there thinking, like, internally, like, man, like, if that ever happened, obviously it never would, but I'm like, I'd shit my pants walking to the cage. You know what I mean? I'd be like, I got to go through it. That I'll never back out. But I'm like, this is tough.
It's wild. It's a wild experience.
It's a crazy experience. Yeah. So we got another one from Bet Near. What made you so interested in joining 3PC, and what are your initial thoughts on the amount of engagement? That's for Kenny. I'll answer real quick. I think it's amazing so far. We just launched. It's really cool. And as Kenny might attest to as well, we have so many things in the work that's going to really kind of set us apart from a ton of other sites as well. But I'll let Kenny answer that.
Yeah, dude. So it seems like it's all coming together. I'm feeling a lot of synergy.
Nice.
So you mentioned Sean Gannon's name. So the way that I came into the sport was I was one of the nerds on MMA.tv from way back in the day. And it was an old MMA forum.
Yep.
At the time, there were a ton of pro fighters on there.
Yeah.
There was definitely some shit talking on there, but for the most part, it was just a cool community of people who loved the freaking sport. We were discussing who should fight who, and then who, how a certain fighter looked after a certain fight, yada yada. And there weren't as many fights at the time, but like there was activity every single day. And that was a part of my daily routine. Probably a couple times a day, I would go on there and I'd be talking about the fighters and giving my analysis. And, I would even be promoting my, jiu-jitsu seminars coming up, or, linking up with people that I could train with. And so it was just an awesome community of fighters, practitioners, fans, coaches, like all that stuff. And, it was really cool for me because I would go on there and be like, oh shit, Josh Barnett's on there talking about stuff. And this guy's talking. And it wasn't anything but like completely organic. Like this there was a grassroots movement behind mixed martial arts early on. Like this is the early stages. So it was just a really special time. I haven't been on a forum, since then, dude. Like, and I guess I was on it a little bit. It started to become kind of a trash heap a little bit as fighting.
Yeah.
I would kind of keep it away. I didn't want that negativity around me when I was fighting or listening to that stuff. But I would go on there every once in a while. So for me, I feel like it's an opportunity to kind of bring back a great community of people who are true MMA fans, who want to connect, who want to talk about the sport in a more educated manner, who want to, link up with fighters and connect with fighters and ask questions, past, present, whatever, and all the different MMA personalities. It's like, let's bring that back. Let's bring back that community because, as you know, Brian, now that you have like a bigger persona and bigger voice out there, so people could be negative out there. I don't know if you know. So, and listen, everyone is entitled to an opinion, but I think when you get like a community of like-minded people, of people who are trying to be in there and be respectful and genuinely trying to learn about the sport and discuss the sport, like I think you kind of get something like Three Punch Convo. So we're getting the community from way back then and then upgrading it with all of the technological advancements of that three punch combo brings. It's like it's a whole different game that's going to elevate it and make it just a much better experience, man. So I had a blast, posting about the fights on Saturday night. I did feel like I was, back in the early aughts, in the sport, man. So it was fun.
That's how I launched, because my MMA career, my fandom, I started when I was 15, and Rich Franklin was my teacher, and that's what got me into it, right? So then when I hopped on the underground, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I also got on SureDog. SureDog used to give you belts. Like if you post enough, you'd be a pro or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I remember that's where I learned about Fedor. And I was like, oh shit, there's a thing called Pride. I went and bought like every Pride, and then all of a sudden became Chuck versus Vanderlei. And then I was a diehard Rich guy. And people were like, the UFC's not signing Matt Lindland because he's afraid of Rich, or they're afraid he beat Ray. I'm like, fuck you, no, he's not. But it's so funny. But I love the underground, and I've never told this story. It's embarrassing, but Joe Rogan used to post on the underground.
He did.
He was a very
man.
And around the time, this is back in UFC 50 days, there was rumors that he was going to fight Wesley Snipes.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that, right?
Yeah.
So I commented on one of his posts and I went real aggressive. I'm like, Joe, I fucking love you, dude. I hope you destroy Wesley Snipes. Fuck Wesley Snipes. The only good movie he ever made was Demolition Man. Fuck Blade. Like I was just like a 20-year-old went way too hard. And within 3 minutes, it was like 3 to 5 minutes, he responded on the underground, bro, relax. I'm like, yeah, I need to calm down. I need to calm down a little bit.
So that's an amazing story. I love that. It's very Joe Rogan-like.
Yeah.
So to get back to the Sean Gannon story.
Yeah.
So on the underground, I kind of became like the underground legend for a little bit because I posted that Sean Gannon was about to fight Kimbo Slice in an underground fight that day. And everyone's like,
wow,
you're full of shit, bro. That's not happening. Whatever can flow, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, I'm just telling you, I was invited to the fight.
Yeah.
It's going down.
Right.
You want? Hopefully there'll be video to back me up later. And sure enough, the fight happened. They're like, "Oh my God,
Ken Flo caught it."
So that was the Sean Gannon, and I used to train with Sean way back in the day.
I love it. Yeah, I remember watching that video, and this is when internet wasn't great, and I've been chomping at the bit to get to the video, and I finally got it, and my internet wasn't working. I'm shaking, like I'm losing my mind. Finally got it to work. Finally loaded. I'm like, wow,
dude, how crazy was that?
Insane. insane. He just made. Kimbo's a dog. Like rest in peace, Kimbo.
Yeah.
But like he made Kimbo quit. Both these guys, like Sean wasn't leaving there unless he was dead. You know what I mean? He wasn't gonna leave. And it was super impressive. And I'm like, God, that's just neck. Because I was kind of the tough guy around my neighborhood. I got in a lot of fights, had a lot of anger issues. So I always thought I was tough, right? But I've never walked into an MMA school and was like, oh, I got 40 street fights. I have so much respect for the sport. I've never been that idiot. Yeah. But I remember sitting there humbling myself, looking at a guy like Sean Gannon and go, now that's a tough guy. That I couldn't do that. That's a tough dude right there.
Crazy. And that, again, to get back to the forum stuff a little bit, like it kind of, of course I had a connection to Sean or whatever, but like, I felt like it was during those times where we had a deeper connection to fights as a result. Cause you're like, oh, like Sean Gannon used to post on the Underground and this guy, Jens Paulman was always on there and all these other guys. And you're like, I get to watch them fight, I know. So it was kind of the golden era. So we're going to try to bring that golden era back.
Absolutely. I've been trying to that fighter I've mentioned on Kenny Florian, he just turned pro. A Cincinnati kid, Hunter Fraser. He just turned pro. And I'm like, dude, you got to hop on because it's so cool for fans to follow you from day one and then be like, holy shit, this guy's fighting. It's really cool. Like I remember throwing Sean McCorkle was a really good underground poster, really funny heavyweight. Yeah. That got him to the UFC because no disrespect to Sean. He wasn't super skilled. He's got a good win over Mark Hunt. But he had one trick he had a good ground game and a good Kimura. Other than that, he was pretty weak. But he was so funny on the Underground and had a good record that they're like, we got to sign this guy. I love it. Dude. You knew who else to post on the Underground? Absolutely. And this is a throwback name. I was actually going to start the interview with a joke about Ultimate Fighter 1. I was like, hey, how many times a week do you see Sammy Hoger? He used to post on the Underground quite a bit.
Yes.
That's one of my all-time favorite episodes, Ultimate Fighter, is when you guys are like, this dude's stealing everybody's shit. Hats and everything. He's got 50 hats in his bag. You're like, I don't have one. What's going on? That was good days, man. I love that shit.
Oh, that's hilarious, man. No, it's so true, man. Like the ability to build up your brand organically and get fans to kind of follow along. And again, it's like not everybody can be on the Ultimate Fighter. Not everybody can that like 15-minute promo on you and your life in the UFC. So it's like, hey, tell people, connect with fans in an authentic way. Like, get your fan base, man. Promote your stuff also, and it's a great place for fighters to make some money as well. Like,
100%,
a lot of benefits for fighters, and a lot of benefits for fans, and giveaways, and just a ton of options. So anyway, I can go on and on. So
let's go to the next question. Time's limited here. For both of you boys, what impressed you most with Ila's victory to Poirier over Charles at International Fight Week? On the contrary, what surprised you most about Charles' approach to the fight? Do you think he successfully implemented his game plan, or is it that much better than him? Charles may have not had sex with. So I'm going to real quick answer this. I thought Charles fought a little kind of weird. To me, he was super aggressive, which I thought was kind of weird. I thought there'd be more kicks, especially to the body. I necessarily didn't think he'd go for a lot of takedowns. He went for one, and then Ilya kind of stopped that. Yes. But he stood in front of him a little bit too much for a guy who has a range and has good boxing. He stood right in front of Ilya, who's a killer. That was my big thing then. But what impressed me with Ilya is his skill, his power, confidence, everything. I mean, he might be one of the most perfect fighters there is right now. Yeah. I'm so curious to see him against Islam or even Sarukian with a really good grappling base. I really kind of want to see that. But I'll go ahead and let you take it away. What do you think about it? I know you broke this down a little bit on the Kenny Florian on Monday.
Yeah, no, dude, with you on a lot of those points per usual, bro. I think that Ilya is certainly special. I think that from a technical perspective, he brings an inside boxing, which we have not seen. I mean, he looks like an elite boxer in there. Everything is clean. Like everything is so fundamentally sound. And those guys who have those amazing fundamentals can make it look very easy. Not a whole lot of fancy. He's not doing anything you haven't seen before necessarily, like from a techniques perspective. Right. But his execution is just truly, truly world-class. Now, the thing that can make us amazing and make us who we are can also kill us. And because Charles Oliveira is such a fan favorite, or I should say because he's so aggressive, it's what makes him a fan favorite. Yeah. How do you get that out of you all of a sudden and just go, oh, yeah, you know what? For this fight, I'm not going to be me. I'm just not going to be aggressive here. It's like, maybe he was aware that he shouldn't have been. But he just couldn't resist himself. He had to go forward. He had to make it exciting. And if you try to make it exciting and you try to go after Topuria, and this is where his genius lies, he is so good on the counter. You're like, if I hang back, he stalks me and knocks me out. If I go forward and try to hunt him, he knocks me out. What the hell do I do? But I think you're spot on with the kicks. You have to keep him on the outside and keep him uncomfortable. And especially, we both agreed on the head kick stuff.
Right.
Where were those? Where were the teeps that he typically throws? I think he was trying to get to that tie clinch because of the height advantage, and then like throw knees. He's got nasty knees, and I agree there. The problem is you're also in that dangerous boxing range of Topuria. And Topuria, he figures you out so quickly, man. He's a freaking computer. I think Topuria is that good, and I think Charles didn't have a perfect day and a recipe for disaster. Even if he fought great, I think Topuria probably would have won anyway, if I'm being honest. Just the way that you don't just develop skills and just perform all of a sudden. You always fall back to the level of your training and what you're used to. So anyways, that's my take on it.
Yeah, spot on as always. We agree there. Yeah. This is from Tim Mills 12. Which fighters currently ranked outside the top 10 bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight do you believe have a chance to become championship material? For me, I would go Peyton Talbot, Aaron Pico, Mauricio Rufy. Pico I love, but we haven't seen him yet. So let's wait till we see him in the UFC. Because I love Pico in Bellator, and he has some losses in Bellator. But the UFC is a different ballgame. We know that there's levels to this. So gotta wait on Pico. I think Talbot at 35, he proved us wrong. We both picked Lima. His counter wrestling looked pretty good. I still think there's needs to be some improvement out of there. And Rufy is just, I just saw that guy's hit pads recently. That guy is just absolute nightmare.
I think I saw that same clip, dude.
Dude, he was throwing
nasty.
like crazy.
He's so fast.
Oh my gosh, yeah, insane. I think he's like in New Hampshire too. Like he opened up.
Is he really?
I think he opened up a school.
I think
in
Cody
New Hampshire.
was telling me that. I'm like, Cody, that's not true. It's just because you live in New Hampshire, bro.
No, right. You want to be right, Cody. Yeah. Right now, we're not going to New Hampshire. No, I'm pretty sure he has like a. I don't know why. I know Glover went to Connecticut. Maybe that that power dynamic up there. But yeah, he has a school in New Hampshire. It's wild.
Wow. Interesting. So is he saying outside of the top 10? Is that what he said?
Yeah, outside of the top 10, like what three guys outside of those three weight classes do you think have a shot at becoming championship material? And he listed 3. Do you have any like outside the top 10 that are peaking up? Wellmaker. We've had him on the pod on AF. He's a freak.
I want to see more of him from a grappling perspective, but from what I've seen striking wise and athletically and from like a composure standpoint, dude. Yeah, he might be the truth. Definitely someone to keep your eye on. Jean Silva is number 10. So he's still in the top 10, but that's a guy that I think is real. Yusuf Zalal, I think is interesting. I think he's a guy that can certainly challenge for the belt. I think people are sleeping on him. If he puts it all together, like on a really good night, dude, he's a problem, and people forget. He went all 3 rounds, went 15 minutes with the great Ilia Topuria. So
I think he won the third round.
Better. Yeah, exactly.
I think he won the third round in that fight. Yeah.
Dude, that loss is looking better and better.
Yeah, it is, dude.
So, yeah, for sure. And then I don't know, man. I think outside of that, I'm trying to think. I'm cheating here looking at the UFC rankings as well. Yeah, Rufy, dude, absolutely. Mauricio Rufy is special, but even when I see him now in regards to Topuria, I'm like, does he beat Topuria though?
Right.
I don't know, but dude, Rufy, he's got that certain something.
He does,
and he's also a lot bigger than Topuria. So I think as he develops, dude, I think that fight is going to get more and more intriguing. So
yeah, he had a fight, 2 fights ago. Rufy did where he didn't get the guy out of there. James Longtop. James Longtop's just tough as nails.
Yeah.
And he looked human because he wouldn't sleep with him. Right? He looked human. But fighters need that. You need to go. You can't just run through everybody. You need that. And he looks amazing on pads. He's confident. Like he's with a good team. I think he's opening the school in New Hampshire. And then when he does camps, he'll probably go back to the fight nerds in Brazil.
Gotcha.
So, But yeah, that kid's a stud. All right, from Vaughn, this is a good question. I would like to know how I can get Kenny to sign my Kenny Florian action figure. Didn't know there was Kenny Florian action figures, and why don't I have one? Did they make? Kenny,
I have one up in this closet right up here.
Oh man, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple out there, dude. Let's see. How can we do that?
Well, hopefully, because he's a big Vaughn, he's a good guy. He's heavy on Twitter.
Yes.
Really good capper himself.
Yeah.
Hopefully, Vaughn, because we're not going to give Kenny's address out or anything, but hopefully 3PC, we're going to have some meetups.
There we go. Yeah, there you go.
Bring that thing, Kenny, an autograph. Kenny's a nice guy.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll send it to Petrie's house. Petrie will send it to me. I'll send it back to Petrie.
There we go. We could. There's tons of work around. I've told literally like pretty much everything about me on this podcast except my fucking social security number, which is only bound to happen 1 minute. This next one's from Loco MMA. I love to know Kenny Florian's overall take on UFC BJJ. Tell him the homie Loco from Cholo MMA asked. He knows what's up.
Yes.
LOL. Jokes aside, I'm really interested in his take. That's a good take. UFC BJJ, which I'm not a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I did love doing jiu-jitsu, but I was intrigued by it. I thought it was pretty good. And there's from rumblings of who they're getting for seasons upcoming, which are grapplers that I knew. I didn't really know. I knew Mikey Mucciacci. I didn't know the other guy much. I knew he was more of a gi grappler, which I don't follow too much. But your take on UFC BJJ there, Kenny, for being a steam black belt.
So, dude, it's crazy how much the sport has grown. Guys legitimately can make 7 figures doing jiu-jitsu now. Like, now this is all together. Like, if you're Gordon Ryan, if you are a big name, your videotapes, your instructionals, your seminars, you're being on the competitive circuit. If you put that all together and you are like top 1, top 2 or 3, there's guys that are making 7 figures. It's insane. But anyways, if you were making 6 figures, like that would have been like, that would have blown my mind. Maybe I would have gone that route instead.
Right.
Anyways, but for jiu-jitsu, so now they have another outlet to compete and make some good money and promote themselves. And the UFC is doing that. So I think the UFC was realizing how much money was being made on these other circuits and how they're filling up these arenas, even like T-Mobile Arena when I was commentating for ADCC this year or last year, and Craig Jones's event, all this stuff. Like they're like, wait, we're leaving money on the table here. We have access to all these athletes. Like, let's start doing our own thing. So I think it's great. I don't love the fact that maybe I hear that maybe they're doing exclusive contracts, so they're maybe permitting guys from. I don't want to see that with the grappling. It's like,
sure, no.
Let the whole grappling world see these guys for me. But the fact that they're able to make a lot of money now, I think is awesome. I saw parts of the season. I had a few buddies that were on the show. Great to see them get promoted. Great to see them do well. Great to see them make money and get these opportunities. And I'm here for it, man. I love it. Jiu-jitsu, grappling is near and dear to my heart. I love the fact that the UFC is in the game now, and I think it's going to help grow the sport tremendously. And, hearing names like Gordon Ryan and Nicky Rod as potential coaches next year, I think, they do not like each other. The beef is real. Yeah. I think they can promote the sport. They're both good on the mic. And yeah, dude, I was talking to people. I'm taking my kids to jiu-jitsu all week, and, a couple moms and dads talking about like, I got to get home and watch UFC BJJ. So like, that's huge. Yeah.
That is huge. Yeah. I've always admired it. I've always appreciated it. When I train, not to make everything about me, when I train, I really gravitate towards like boxing. My hands were really good.
Right.
And jiu-jitsu really wasn't for me. Right. I loved it. I wasn't good at it. I could defend submissions, but I've never got one. I almost got a guillotine one time. It was pretty fucking nasty, but my arms got tired, so I didn't get it. But no, I love the format. I love everything. And I hope there's not an exclusive contract, because the way to promote it, in my opinion, is, I know the UFC does the way they do, but say you have a champion, right? A champion or a guy who competed on the show and you want to lock him down. But say he goes to ADC, say he goes to a Craig Jones grappling or whatever it is, and he loses to a guy. then you have fuel to that fire to be like, okay, let's bring this guy over.
Yeah,
guess what?
man.
There's history now. Now you can fight in our bowl, the UFC BJJ bowl, and this guy's already beat him, you know. And I know a lot of grapplers. I know a lot of those guys on the show. They all knew each other. They all kind of roll each other. It's a tight knit community, and it's really cool. But yeah, I had a blast watching it. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for the next season. All right, let's do 2 more questions here because we're running close on time.
Yep.
Ken Flo, if you look back at your Hall of Fame career, this is from Heath526. Who are some of the fighters you think you did not fight that you wanted to measure yourself against? So who did you never really got to go against? I remember we talked a little bit. You always thought Jim Miller was going to come on your bracket.
Yeah.
Maybe a Frankie Edgar. Was there anybody you're chomping at the bit? Be like, man, I wanted that one, or maybe that would have been a fun one, or
This guy, he knows his stuff. Exactly. Well, you named two guys immediately. Frankie Edgar was the one in particular. Jim Miller certainly there. I always thought I was going to fight Frankie, man, just because he was always at the top. I thought we would bump heads at a certain point. I remember training with him at Henzo's and going so light. I'm like, I'm not going to show him any of my game. I'm not even going to let him do well. I'm just hanging out. Don't want him to pick apart anything. So that was one of the guys. Nate Diaz was another one. I was always going to fight a guy like Nate Diaz, and then Cowboy Cerrone was the other one. So and I was always like, all right, I need to be ready for this. Obviously, I still watch everything, but when I would watch them, I would always be thinking about what I would be doing here, what I need to train for. Oh, that's something I got to watch for. I'm not sure I have something for that. Let's get prepared for this, yada, yada, yada. So those are kind of the 4 guys that I always expected to fight and never did.
Nice. Yeah. I knew those were your answers, and I would have loved it. I always thought, being just a fan of the sport and following your career as long as I have, I just always thought like you and Melvin Gillard were going to main event. And I just, it popped in my head because I just saw him fight recently locally. And I'm like, because Melvin was a big striker. You had striking, but you also grappled. I'm like, they're going to put those together. It's going to be a fight night in like maybe Boston or Colorado or something, but never came together. Real quick before we go, Kenny, I had a question for you. Oh, my question I've always wanted to ask you.
Yes.
And this will be part 2, 3, where I'm having a blast talking to you. I just don't want to take up any more of your time.
Yeah, no worries.
I always wanted to ask you this. You had some legendary performances in your career. You had 3 title shots. You fought a lot of top competition, right? What's the one, and you've probably been asked this before, so I apologize, but what's the one fight you want back? You're like, I could do better. Because, you were really young when you got the Shirk fight, and I thought they should have fucking stopped that fight, if I'm being honest with you, right? Yeah. Then you ran into Prime BJ, which no one wants to see. Yeah. And then you got the 45 auto, and then, just some other stuff too, like that popped up. Some of your losses, maybe even some of your wins. You're like, what, I could have done that a little cleaner.
Dude, I love the question. So I would say the BJ Penn one was tough because I had I overtrained for that fight. Oh, okay. So I felt like I didn't. So there's 2 things to this. If I had a perfect fight, I think BJ, if I'm being honest, was absolutely the better fighter. Yes, there's the better fighter on fight night, and then the better fighter, right? Mm-hmm. The better fighter doesn't always win, but he was the better fighter, and he was the better fighter that night. Right. So if I'm being honest, so in that regard, it was that. The one where I felt like I completely just pooped the bed was Gray Maynard. That's a fight that I wish I had back because I saw his last fight against one of his last fights, and he stood. I think it was against Nate Diaz maybe, and he just stood up and or something like that. And I was like, dude, why didn't he try to take Nate down? I'm like, oh, maybe he's not taking people down anymore. He thinks he's a striker. I'm like, sick. Like let's do this. I'm expecting him to trade with me. And he did not. It was like pick, run away, pick, run away, pick, run away. And at the end of the round, he was taking me down. I was like, damn it. I remember being so frustrated about that. I'm like, damn, I was so dumb. What am I doing? Oh, so annoying. And then hearing the crowd boo and stuff. And it was in Boston. I was like, man. So it was a boring fight. It was a bad performance. It was just, I stayed at home that whole week instead of staying at the fighter hotel. I think that was kind of a mistake because I almost didn't feel like I was in a fight that week. I was so relaxed. So anyways, that whole experience was just a really bad taste in my mouth. And great to see an awesome fighter that was in his prime, but I still feel like that's not me, bro.
Yeah, right. Yeah. If I was going to answer for you, which I never would, but it would be the Gray because that's not the Kenny I knew. That's not the Kenny. That was the fight where I'm like, he's in Boston And then Gray just had a great game plan. You just couldn't really figure it out. You were just like, where's it at? And I can't, 5 rounds could be different, but you're like, where's it at? And he fought smart. I mean, but that's the thing. Sometimes he goes out there and he had some weird performances. No, not knocking Gray, but like he stood with Nate. He stood with Clay in that weird Clay Guida fight where, it's like, and then all of a sudden he's a wrestle heavy guy. I don't know. Either way, Kenny, thank you for copping on.
Dude,
guys, 3punchconvo.com. Kenny's on there. I'm on there. Ask questions. We'll do this again. Kenny's on vacation. He's nice enough to do this. So thank you again. Free code OG free year on 3 Punch Combo. Ken Flo, you're the best. Thank you, buddy.
My bro.